Heyo! Fincastle86 and the Big Cheese with 3 minutes of genealogy wisdom. Today we're talking about the United States Census. Let me tell you folks, this is the bread and butter of American genealogical research. It has so much to offer in there, particularly if you're researching your American ancestors, and the sweet spot I have behind me is between 1850 and 1940. Alright, so let's talk about the census. What is the census? Well, it was prescribed in the United States Constitution back in the 1700s. The first census was 1790, and it's to be done every 10 years. So 1790, 1800, 1810, 1820, and so forth. Now, for 72 years, the census folks, the people who take the census, keep those records private, obviously for privacy concerns, right? But 72 years after a census is taken, it is transferred to the National Archives. And the National Archives publishes that stuff, well, not necessarily publishes it, but allows the public to come in and look at those records. So, the census includes the names of everybody in the United States, what their age is, sometimes their level of education. From year to year, the actual nuggets of information that it includes is different. And actually, from 1790 up until 1840, it only includes the names of the heads of households, which is usually the oldest adult in a house, usually the oldest male in a house. And then it'll include numbers of the other people in the house, but it won't include information. So from 1790 to 1840, I mean, I've used those genealogy records and they are useful, but they're just not as useful as the census records from 1850 onward. And of course, 1950 is not available yet, but it will be available, I think, in 2022 is when that's going to, break through the 72-year barrier. But this is great because it can introduce you to ancestors, sometimes living ancestors. Maybe you have a grandfather or a grandmother, and you can look up their name in the 1940 census or the 1930 census just by knowing where they were and what their name was in 1930, 1940, 1920. And when you find them, you can find their parents. And then from their parents, you can find their parents. And you can keep on going back and back and back in the census records. Alright, so that's what the census is. I already mentioned the sweet spot is 1850 to 1940. That's because 1950 hasn't come out yet. And before 1850, in the 1840 census, only heads of households were written down. Still useful, but the sweet spot is within that date range. Access the census. How do you do it? Well, the 1940 census is actually available on the National Archives website, but all the rest of the census, you need to either go physically to the National Archives and look at it online or in rolls of microfilm, or you have to get a subscription like to Ancestry.com. There's other ways to access it, but the best one is Ancestry.com. You can find all of these images. You get actually the images of the original records right there on your computer. They're fully searchable, so you just put in a name, you put in a census year that you want, the location, and voila, you have information on your ancestors. But my scotch on the rocks is losing its chill, so cheers.